Hello and welcome to Deconstructor of Fun, This Week in Games number 316, where we give our game industry insider takes on the top gaming news stories each week. I'm Jen Donahoe. I fill the marketing and publishing role on the podcast. And today we have...
Philip Black, monetization czar, back from the trenches.
Eric Kress, continuing to stream at the clouds.
I'm Vishnu Katkov, mobile games, founders, and nowadays apps, apparently.
Awesome. All right. So we have a really packed episode. More Matthew Ball chatter. Loot box legal litigation. I tried to make that an alliteration for everybody. Changes at Sony and Ubisoft, Habby and Top Games. And then at the end, I'm going to defend all of marketing because I didn't do a good job of that last week.
You got bounced on. I was listening, I was like, and Phil wasn't even there and you got bounced on. So now I
didn't expect to have to defend all of marketing in the intro banter section. No. So I have come back with data.
It was great. Jen is like, hey, yeah, so what's the show?
Severance.
Severance. Yeah, Severance is such a cool show. They did this little stunt and like, boom, everybody attacks Jen.
Fucking stunt.
It was totally unfair.
Fucking marketer.
Totally unfair. I'll admit.
I was like, what the fuck is going on here?
We'll get to it.
Pre-recording. Okay. You said something in pre-recording. That's what happened.
No, I didn't.
I'm just joking.
No, I didn't. Okay, let's keep going. Let's get to shilling. We've had a lot of podcasts come out, which is fantastic. I had one on Live Ops with folks from Wooga, Playtika, and Game Refinery. It was really fun. Game Refinery actually took a bunch of the insights and put something out to kind of give you a guide for that. Mishka, you just did one. Go ahead.
Yeah. Your podcast was great. I have to give a shout out. Like every time you do these like live ops and the previous one with like Alex Teke, so Alex was really good one. I had one of my typical ones. We talked about the industry, the market. So Chris Hewish, who has been multiple times on the podcast, is he a CEO of Xsolla or president? He kind of keeps switching. But anyways, Chris Hewish, great guy. We talked about money markets, disruptive trends. So basically their state of play report and everything that goes into it. So interesting conversation about the industry.
Oh, he's great. I love chatting with him. So now we have a supper club in LA, sponsored by Addictive. They do advanced app retargeting and churn prediction. They are a DSP. So the focus of this one's going to be marketing and UA folks. It's Thursday, February 6th, 6 to 9, right after the App Growth Summit, which I'm going to be moderating a talk at that. I love that event. So speaking about events, we're going to start talking GDC. We have 2 events that we'd like to talk about. Oh, 5 events. Oh, crap. You've added a bunch more. So I'll do the first couple. So save the date for our GDC pregame, which is Deconstructor Fun and Beta Hat, Sunday, March 16th. We've already had 100 signups and just me kind of sending that around.
Yeah.
So we can hold, I think, 250 people. So keep sending it in. And then you take the rest, Mishka.
Okay. And there's no ticket for the pregame again?
Yeah, you can just walk in. Some folks might get a little wristband for some special guests, but we'll figure that out later.
First come, first wristbands. So this is Sunday. Then on Monday, there's a Sensor Tower dinner. We're going to be there. Some other podcasts going to be there. I don't know if they fit in the same room with Eric Kress, but we'll see. Then on Tuesday, we got the tech brunch with Heroic Labs and Convoy Ventures. So this is focused purely on our technical listeners. So lead tech. Anyways, you know who you are. And then Wednesday we got the supper club. We have now pre-signups coming in. We're going to talk about that more openly, but it's going to be probably our biggest supper club, 150 guests. And then on Thursday, I believe, Jen, we're doing a live TWIG at GDC Nights.
Oh,
yes.
We not? Well, we need to confirm with them, but that's our intent.
Sounds better than Eric's gym where we did it last time.
Yeah. You could smell the old crusty man all the way to the second floor.
Let's just go back to Wednesday and mention our sponsors because it's pretty awesome. TikTok, AppsFlyer, Newzoo, Griffin Gaming Partners, and us obviously are doing the Wednesday dinner together. So thank you to everyone for sponsoring these events, giving us the opportunity to have more people show up.
Kick-ass live ops need kick-ass tools. That's where Heroic Labs comes in. They just released a massive update to their Satori live ops platform. And having done my research, I can say with confidence that it's second to none. In a single product, you get everything you need, including event capture, player segmentation, feature flags, remote configuration, A/B testing, experimentation, live events calendar, messaging, retention graphing, analytics, and so much more. If you're serious about running live services in a game, get serious about the tools you use. Connect with Heroic Labs and make some serious cheese with your live ops.
Attention app and game developers. Are you ready to unlock the secrets behind the world's top performing apps and games? With Sensor Tower, you get the ultimate competitive edge, whether it's breaking into new markets, fine-tuning your UA strategies, or boosting monetization. Dive into data like never before. Track global trends across app stores. Analyze market-leading in-app purchase and in-app ad strategies. And benchmark your performance with real-time insight. The best part, Sensor Tower doesn't just deliver data. It helps you turn it into action. With intuitive tools and expert analysis, it's everything you need to make smarter, faster decisions. Thousands of app and game studios, from indie creators to global giants, trust Sensor Tower to help them win. So why not you? Start your free trial today at sensortower.com. That is sensortower.com.
All right, let's get to corrections, Mr. Kress.
Yes. First off, I have an apology to give to Miss Jen for dismissing her severance stunt in Grand Central. Stan called me like after listening to the podcast and read me the fucking riot act. He's like, I was being myopic and obtuse in his words. I also explained it to my son, who's a huge Severance fan, and he looked at me like I was a complete moron, right? It was like one of those looks that like absolutely burns, particularly coming from your own son, you know? He thought the stunt was very cool, and as did my wife. And after further reflection, I do think these types of stunts do provide what's known as awareness in a relatively cheap way to increasing awareness for new IPs, new seasons, etc. I was just being a bully. I was just being a bully. That's all it was. And if you listen, I listened to it again. I was being a big fucking bully.
Well, thank you, Mr. Kress. And I do love you as well, because that is how you started that whole rant. And thank you for the oh so gentle pushback. To be fair, Adam was on your train as well. And Laura was on the side like, I agree with Jen. It's pretty cute. I did not do a good job of the on-the-spot defense of all marketing. This was in our banter section, and I just thought it was cool. So later on, I have prepped a full response with some insights and some data, which Phil will push back on, and that's totally fine. I'm ready to have that conversation. So back to you.
So, but you know, this leads me to a bigger topic about intellectual honesty, right? And I really want to clarify my view on Matthew Ball, because I think I've gotten a lot of feedback on that, generally speaking. So my biggest criticism of Matthew is he's not a game person, right? He's never worked in gaming. He has nothing to do with gaming whatsoever. He is an intellect. He's a researcher, etc. And I don't think he really understands the consumer of gaming at all in order to connect the dots. But what bothers me most about Matthew is that I don't really think he was being intellectually honest when he wrote the Metaverse. I just don't. I mean, it just doesn't feel that way. So here's my guess. My guess is he wrote this absolutely long, amazing history of the video game space with this deep research that he had done. And there's a small piece on the Metaverse and its potential in the back of the book, right? He brought it to a publisher. The publisher said, this is fucking boring, right? This is not a good book. Where's the beef? Where's the interest, the intrigue, right? So at that stage, he basically went off and started reading Ready Player One and Snow Crash, and he wrote this insane section on the Metaverse after that, right? Changed the book's names to the Metaverse. And this began the big Matthew Ball grift, because it is impossible for me to believe that someone as smart as Matthew Ball believed what he wrote about the Metaverse, right? And what it was going to become. He said that the Metaverse was going to be the next internet, that it represents a successor to the mobile internet, right? Which is insane. A persistent, interconnected world enabling real-time interactions and experiences. He said the potential of this thing was multi-trillion-dollar economy, reshaping industries like entertainment, real estate, education, commerce, right? And then finally, the most ridiculous part of his whole assumption is interoperability, right? This was the cornerstone to his vision of the metaverse, right? And this never made any sense. Like, because there is no economic reason to create a ubiquitous metaverse for these big companies. These big companies are thriving on their own ecosystems, right? The notion of allowing identities and assets to stream seamlessly go between one metaverse and another across different like technologies and platforms. It's ridiculous, right? Ridiculous. Now, in his defense, he does acknowledge the risks, like the technical limitations, regulatory concerns, privacy, all these other things. But the expectations that he put forth are just so insanely ridiculous that it doesn't even pass the common sense test, right? So I just think there's no possible way he actually believed this. Yet he was on the road getting paid hundreds of thousands of dollars pitching this nonsense. He created a fucking metaverse ETF for fuck's sake, and 2 years later, only 2 years later, he writes an opus, 220-page analysis on the sad state of gaming without the mention of the metaverse. That is preposterous, absolutely preposterous in my view, right? And this is the same grift that plays over and over again with McKinsey, right? They wrote that the metaverse would be $5 trillion business in 2030. In 2030, dude, that's like 4 or 5 years away, right? I mean, and they get charged insane consulting fees to executives that like latch on to this bullshit, chasing rainbows and unicorns. And I saw this firsthand. They would resort their entire organization to go after this shit idea, right? Great people chasing these ideas. They would lose people because they didn't believe in these ideas. And this was all pushed by McKinsey and Mr. Ball about the metaverse like just 2 years ago. But what makes McKinsey even worse is that not only are they collecting fees on the front end, they're collecting fees on the back end as all these companies are now unwinding these fucking strategies, doing layoffs and getting rid of people and reorganizing because they went after this bullshit. It's fucking diabolical what McKinsey does with this shit, right? And this repeats again and again and again. Like the Y2K fiasco back in the day. The 6 accounting firms, they created fear-mongered for years before Y2K on the collapse of society when this clock hit midnight in 1999, and then made millions and millions and millions and millions of fees, like consulting on this fucking bullshit, right? And 2K became nothing but a fucking nothing burger. And not because of people's fixing it, but just because it was not as big of a deal as they laid out, right? So this is what really bugs me about Ball, McKinsey, IDC, back in the day with the Newzoo stuff about the fucking bullshit forecasts, It has no basis on reality or common sense, right? It's a big cash grab, a sham, a racket, a con, a hustle. It's a total grift. That is my issue with Matthew Ball.
Amen.
Wow.
I do have to say, I was listening to the last episode and I don't know if I've ever agreed with Kress as much as I did with the last episode. Like that was like 1-to-1, because as you said, like this is financially incentivized research. And the fact that, Matthew was doubling down with these super expensive speaking gigs, predicting $1 trillion business, and now going to a point, Eric, as you said, he's not even mentioning it. And so the problem that I see in this is this does damage. It does financial damage, but it also does damage on the lives because these companies are being restructured and now they're lost the money. So now people lose their jobs. And I understand being wrong. I think it's great that you take a massive swing. You try to, come up with a new trend. But if you get it wrong, I think it's imperative that you apologize, that you backtrack, that you explain why you got it wrong. But the fact that that doesn't happen and you come up with a new deck and say like, hey, industry, here you go. The next, few years, just use this for any pitch deck. As Eric always puts it, buyers beware. Like that, that's the way I would put with these predictions as well. So I agree. And again, nothing personal, but just when we're talking about this process of if you get something wrong in academia, you have to be honest about it.
That's why we do corrections on our podcast, because we try to be accountable. I think that's kind of missing. So I'm not condoning anything, but do you think that the rise of AI and the focus on AI had an impact with the metaverse not being a focus anymore? Well, listen, first of all, again, the metaverse isn't a thing, but do you think the rise of AI played into its downfall?
From a top of mind perspective, sure, right? Yeah, people now are chasing those rainbows and unicorns. Absolutely. Frankly, I think the AI thing is far more real than the metaverse
Correct,
ever
yeah,
was, right?
yeah.
But in essence, AI should actually help like to build out the metaverse in theory, right? Like if metaverse was even a real thing to begin with, which I don't think it was, right? Because I want to be clear on this, because then I get feedback on fucking. I gotta stop going on LinkedIn. Like this is my social media. I gotta stop, dude. Heatherly,
Yeah.
I'm gonna choke that guy down in LA, dude.
I invited him to our party.
Figuratively. Dude, he gets out there and starts talking about, oh, well, Roblox and Minecraft are doing quite well. You know, Matthew Ball's a genius. I'm like, dude, that is the antithesis of his thesis on the metaverse. Like, those are closed ecosystems. That is the exact opposite of what they were saying. And so, like, no, Matthew Ball got it all fucking wrong. Like, 100% wrong. Like, actually, there's nothing about his metaverse that has actually come true in the last 2 or 3 years. And we're not even on that path anyway. But anyway, the point is, AI could help facilitate this ubiquitous bullshit that he put out there. It never made sense, period. I did this Bubble Trouble episode a few years ago where I was talking about this. It's all very niche. Like, metaverses are like World of Warcraft and fucking Call of Duty. That's what metaverse is, and Roblox, and they're never ever going to interoperate, right? They're just based on the desires and the interests of the audience that you're serving. This is not Ready Player One. This is just not. It's not going to be. So anyway.
Got it. Okay.
Sorry.
Thank you.
Yes.
For expressing your opinion. I appreciate how forthright you are.
Don't think you're gonna get a birthday card from him.
Let's invite him too.
Dude,
I'll send him a
cashing
note.
checks, dude. He doesn't give a fuck about what I say. Like, good for him, man. Good for him. You like the grift, you do the grift well. Just keep going. Like, that's your business.
So why do you think people like Tim Sweeney pay so much attention to him? Why did people like Zuckerberg rename their company Meta? Like, was this all just a play from the beginning? This was like the ball smoke screen.
Well, for Facebook, it was a matter of survival, right? They wanted to control their own destiny with a new platform and a new
That's Zuck's
paradigm, right? And from that perspective, it makes total sense. Again, his metaverse is completely different. Like, that is like a proprietary ecosystem for fucking Facebook, right? Like, this is not like some benevolent, let's open standards, everyone sha-la-la bullshit, right? That makes sense. Economic for the company, whatever, even though it makes no sense from the perspective of business, and they're just wasting money and burning money at this stage for VR. And then same thing for Epic, right? Epic is trying to build out their version of the metaverse, or a metaverse that it benefits them, right? And they are probably far more benevolent than most, but still, it's their own proprietary system. They're not going to share shit with fucking Minecraft, right? They're not going to share assets. That's ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous. So anyway,
they would have to use Unreal.
Why what he said from the get-go didn't make any fucking sense. And he knew it. I think he knew it, Mr. Ball. So.
The one thing I will say to close this out is it was a good kind of consulting deck that pulled together a lot of, we talked about that last week.
Yeah.
So,
I'm not,
dude,
not
the
the
data
besmirching
itself.
his work, by the way. I'm besmirching the book, but the metaverse concepts. But the fact of the work that he did on this deck is amazing. Yeah. It's a tour de force, right? I mean, I wish I had half the skill to build that kind of deck. I mean, I don't even have half the energy anymore, but like, it's an amazing deck. I think it does a really, really good job of articulating this current state of this industry, 100%. But there's some notable problems with it, which we talked about last week. I don't think he really understands mobile, and I don't think he understands the customer. But like, besides that fact, it's a really good articulation of what's happening.
All right.
But he did work at Amazon Games, right? Because he said he's not from games.
No, it was the movie division. He worked on a transmedia project with DC. I saw him advertising on Twitter, which was a true transmedia project that the narrative from the show would reach the mobile game, although I've heard little about that since.
Yeah, just stop. Yeah.
All right, let's continue on. I want to do this as quickly as I can because it did make some news, and I do think what's going on with loot boxes, people need to pay attention to it to just make sure that from a marketing perspective and a game perspective, you don't get in trouble. So Genshin Impact Hoyoverse is settling a U.S. Federal Trade Commission lawsuit over selling loot boxes to players under the age of 16. It's going to pay a $20 million fine. Here's what is changing for the company per the FTC news site. They're prohibited from allowing children under 16 to purchase loot boxes in their video games without a parent's affirmative express consent, prohibited from selling loot boxes using virtual currency without providing an option for consumers to purchase them directly with real money, prohibited from misrepresenting loot box odds, price, and features, required to disclose loot box odds, exchange rates for multi-tiered virtual currency. And the last two are basically don't collect PII and follow COPA. So also just for marketers, the other thing that they called out specifically was that the FTC alleged that the Hoyoverse spends millions of dollars to promote its gacha system to its players, many of which are children. It brought up an instance in 2021 where they paid an influencer, some money to make videos about like opening loot boxes. And then what happened in that is that they actually didn't follow what actually happens in the game. And so in the game, you can only open 10 loot boxes, but in the video, they edit it. And so it wasn't true. So don't fuck with your videos. If you show loot boxes, perhaps don't even do that. So Phil, does this crush your monetization soul reading this?
This is just like a colossal waste of everyone's time. Like, what is this? This is just like a fart in the wind. Like, we never know what games are going to be selected. They just choose a random game. I don't understand why Roblox has never gotten scrutiny. I mean, we're going to talk about the Hindenburg research group beforehand, but like, why do we pick Genshin? Like, is this an anti-China move? I don't know. Is this Lena's like last farewell? Because this happened under her administration. I don't think we know anything about the marketing side of this or what the takeaways are. I don't think we understand what this administration is going to go after. I don't think we know what they care about. I don't think we know what the new FTC administrator is going to care about. Like, most of this, I get the COPA violations. Like, sure. Like, that's something that I think you'll start to see more enforcement on. I'm surprised that hasn't been in a lot of people's predictions. Like, it's kind of been like Pax Regula Cana, so to speak, in the video game industry. Like, there's been very little chatter about loot boxes in a very long time, I feel like. And we'll see if that continues. I mean, Trump has talked about video games at one point or another in terms of violence, but I don't think there's been any conversation about loot boxes. And this is all dumb shit. This is a settlement. Remember, this isn't case law yet. This is literally throwing as many complaints as they can, because that's what you want to do in a settlement, to make your argument as good as possible. Like, a lot of these complaints are like they had banner gotchas, and the banner gotchas say that they're going to have an increased probability, but they dinged them because the base gotcha doesn't have any probability to begin with. So they're almost like they're advertising a rate increase where it's going from nothing to something. That's just like really ticky-tacky bullshit. Like, this isn't even like the Fortnite case. You remember that earlier this year? Epic was actively deceiving people. Like, normally I hate these cases, these stupid dark pattern cases, but Epic was doing shady shit in Fortnite in terms of like where the close button was in confirmation. This is ticky-tacky bullshit.
Okay.
And that's all I have to say on the matter. And just to give you a screenshot, like, this is the character banners that they're talking about. You see that there's up text suggesting that there's an increased drop rate. That's one of the complaints, is that this says up because it's a character wish event versus a standard wish event, and they shouldn't have said up. That's the type of stuff we're now going to have the state look into.
Okay. Yeah, I think, though, for me and for marketers, my advice is to, I don't know, first of all, stay away. Second of all, don't edit it to do something that isn't true, which you shouldn't do anyway. Yeah.
They're going to give you your pack opens.
Yeah. This was with an influencer, and then they edited her video. So
but they used it as creative, though. They used it as creative that they sold versus just organics.
Yeah. I mean, an influencer can do what an influencer is going to do. All right. A few other things from me. So over at Sony, they have a new sole CEO where Hideki Nishino is named the sole CEO of SIE, Sony Interactive Entertainment. Herman Hulst will continue leading the studio business group. The CFO is promoted to the Sony corporate CEO. Hulst was the head of the first party studios and also the group that was taking their IP to do transmedia stuff. So anyone comments on that one? Or
yeah, I'm gonna follow up with people because just to hit what this means
this morning.
Yeah. I think at the end of the day, we were saying this before, is that the Japanese are now in control of Sony, right? The Western was control for years, over a decade, right? So now the Japanese are in control, like, for better or for worse, right? But the reality of it is their entire business is in the West, right? So it's like there's a little bit of a mismatch there. So we'll see how it operates. But right now they're clearly making lots of cuts on live services. They're consolidating teams. They're trying to make things more efficient, which I guess Herman is kind of like leading up from the studio side. But most likely it's nothing, but it's just creating more efficiencies. But I'll find out if there's anything there. I'll let you know.
Okay, cool. Final little thing, just really quick. Last week, we talked about Marvel Snap getting caught up in all of the ByteDance shutdown. You have not been able to download their app in the App Store or the Google Play Store in the US. They are now fixed. So they have a new publisher to help them self-publish called Skystone Games. The Marvel Snap folks said that they probably lost $600,000 in revenue from the outage. So it looks like they are now clear, and they said they worked with Newzoo on that. So thanks to, again, mobilegamer.biz for that info. All right, Kress, passing it to you.
Alrighty. David Haddad is heading for the door at Warner Brothers. Finally. Actually, I'm surprised it didn't happen a long time ago, to be honest. Like, I think he's had a tumultuous time there, let's say, with very high highs and super low lows with Mr. Suicide Squad. So we'll see how they backfill all those roles. And I think that's all I can say on that one. The developer of Palworld, Pocket Pair, is starting to publish games. They announced that their first project from this new initiative was a game from Sargent Studio. What's the game? Anybody know?
No, they haven't said shit about it yet, to my knowledge.
All right. Hindenburg calls it quits. This is the big one, right? The firm that went after Roblox with their short-selling memo that clearly did not work because the stock is trading at a 12-month high right now, is now shutting down. He said, job stress. Nate Anderson. It's too stressful. So, got it.
Roblox is bulletproof, baby. They're trying to put bullets into Roblox, and it is just keep soldiering on.
Yeah, that ricocheted pretty bad. Like, he shut the whole firm down after, releasing a salvo on Roblox. He used the P word and everything. It was like, and then he was like, too much. I'm done. It's like, okay.
Yeah, I think he should go after somebody that some of the concerns are legitimate, but in a minor way. Kress, to your point on that topic, like, go after someone who really deserves it. All right, so continuing on. Oh, Ubisoft. They announced.
Ubisoft. So this is like a drop in the motherfucking bucket. I'll be honest. I'm sorry for those people that have lost their jobs, but this is nothing compared to what Ubisoft needs to do. But Ubisoft's laid off 185 people in their European operations from Stockholm and UK, right? Is there any others? Yeah. So these are some of the development teams that were supporting both Star Wars Outlaws, Skull and Bones, and X Defiant. But my question still remains: when are they going to shut fucking Paris down? Right? When are they just going to get rid of that whole goddamn building? That's when we'll start talking about layoffs that actually are material for fucking Ubisoft. But anyway, I think we should see a lot more of these type of restructurings going forward as they kind of retrench and retool and figure out what the fuck is going to happen with that company. I still think fundamentally they likely will get acquired by Savvy or maybe Tencent if they can make it work. I don't think they can go on their own.
Yeah.
They're 19,000 right now. What do you think is the head count that they operate at? Like, what is a good equilibrium for
10,000.
10,000. You think they should basically do half?
Yeah, basically. Yeah.
Okay.
Isn't EA like 12,000?
Yeah. They should right size to like the EA levels in that range.
Okay.
Easy.
Not like must cut, like 80%. We're not there yet.
No, I mean, look, making games is very complicated. It requires lots of fucking people. Like, it's not like you can just get rid of everybody, right?
Yeah, I got to keep the roller derby.
This is not a tech company.
I was being hyperbolic.
No. But it's important to distinguish, though. Like a tech company, you need engineers, but you don't need the bodies to do all the different operations to make games.
What do you think about the sales of Star Wars Outlaws? Because I think they reported there was 1 million. That seems quite low for expectation. I think it was like the lowest selling Star Wars game of that caliber.
Yeah, that's terrible. And the quality wasn't even that bad. I think there were lots of other reasons why I think that game did not capture the hearts and minds. Part of it's because Disney's completely destroyed the Star Wars IP since they acquired it, but also because I don't think the game was made with the proper way, but I don't want to go into that too much.
Yeah. Massive Entertainment is a good studio, so it was kind of surprising.
Yeah. I'm hoping their next, hopefully if they should survive because they are a really good studio and hopefully they kind of iterate on the Division, the style game of the Division. So
Yeah, I have a little bit of this is not a prediction, but I was kind of looking at this Ubisoft news, and we have a Ubisoft office here in Helsinki, as does Stockholm that lost 20 Ubisoft employees. So in Helsinki, we have a pretty big one. It's called Red Links. They made those motocross games, and it has been doing other type of projects. One of them has been this game that I just remembered, which was called Gwen's Getaway. And it's a surprising thing that Ubisoft would be making a puzzle game with this narrative, like with everything that you should be making in puzzle games 7 years ago. So anyway, they apparently kicked off this project. I looked at it and it's dead. It was 9 months in soft launch and killed pretty quickly, about 100,000 installs, 35,000 in net revenue. And their managing director, who was fantastic, Celine, she has changed her role to regional mobile and cross-platform production director for Ubisoft Finland, Sweden, and Romania. And so when a managing director of a specific studio changes the name to be something broader, I'm sensing that with the game as well being killed, that the Helsinki studio might be in trouble. Hopefully that's not the case, but yeah, early signals of perhaps new cuts.
by the way, holy shit. I was looking at the Rainbow Six game in beta in Canada or wherever the fuck it is, dude. It's fucking horrific. It is horrific.
Really?
The
On
mobile
mobile?
one?
Yes, it's making like 10 cents per download, dude. Like you can't get worse than that, right? That's like, that is unbelievable. I couldn't believe it. Like the game visually looks amazing. Like the fidelity. I didn't really look into the gameplay all that much. I was just looking more at the metrics. Like, yikes. How much money did they blow on that thing? They should never have made that game internally, like ever.
Why? But why? Like, okay,
Because
so
they're not
theoretically,
capable. They don't
not-
know
yeah.
shit about mobile. They don't know shit about monetization. Like there was never any success vector for this game besides fidelity and quality, which is the exact opposite of what you need to do for mobile, right? It's like,
just on a hypothetical level, I understand. Like Rainbow Six, they have a live service game. They are able to produce quality titles. So if they would say, hey, we want to do this quality live ops game, we want to move it to mobile, we're going to put our research, the same ones that are making the PC version. I mean, now I'm describing Warzone. So maybe we'll just continue.
Exactly.
Let's continue.
let's just go
Perhaps
down
you
this.
arrived at the Warzone deck.
Let's go with this logical
Okay.
argument that
All
you're
I'm gonna-
throwing
no,
out there.
I fast forwarded and somebody said Warzone. I'm like, okay, yeah, actually, yeah. But actually, the Warzone had Call of Duty Mobile already there, and Tencent was defending their turf. So I get that point. But yes. Okay, moving on. Singapore-based outsourcing company Virtuous has acquired 3 game development outsourcing firms, Netherlands-based Abstractions, US-based Pipeworks Studios, and Canada-based Umanaya Interactive. The financial terms of the deals remain undisclosed. These acquisitions increase Virtuous' total headcount from 900 to 1,200 employees across 60 studios. I have a question about this. So, Eric, what's your take on it? Because Keywords was another one that has massive investment from private equity. They are now acquiring these studios. And I'm trying to understand, is this sort of like a new boom for third-party publishers, or is this the consolidation of the outsourcing studios? Like, which one is it?
Definitely the consolidation of these studios, and the capabilities of Keywords is pretty impressive relative to what I've seen out there. Like there's not many companies that actually can do what Keyword does, but it's all kind of part of the fundamental challenges with this industry as a whole is that like it is very expensive to make games. And if you can use outsourcing facilities to make it cheaper, people will do that. And I think there's a lot of opportunities for these big publishers to do so, to reduce cost and reduce risk, right? Because you don't have to hire all these people and have them, right? You just use them when you need them, right? That actually is a great value. These outsourcing studios were huge back in the day when we were doing like 16 SKUs per title, right?
Yeah.
Across all these different crazy platforms that we just didn't want to have our core teams at EA building because it was too fucking expensive to go after these small opportunities, right? So they would like outsource everything that was like on Nintendo's platforms or on, PC and handheld or whatever. And so like it made sense. And I think today it makes more sense because of lots of different parts of the game development process that should not be done internally. It should be done with a cheaper alternative. So, and these are probably in all like mostly low cost locations, unlike, EA and fucking Montreal and Vancouver and Redwood City.
So if you're a smaller studio that is doing outsourced work, is this good for you or bad for you? Like, does it mean that Virtuous and Keywords are just taking more business from you?
It's a combination, right? Because they're an acquisition candidate, which is good. for them, right? So they can get a liquidity for their shareholders or their key people. I think generally companies want to put their risks. They can't have it all in one location. Keywords can't own everything from EA, for instance. So they'll outsource to other studios as well. But if you don't have the scale, they may not be interested as well because there's too much risk with that too. So I don't know.
This podcast is brought to you by AppsFlyer. In today's digital world, understanding your app's journey from discovery to download is more than just insightful, it's essential. Enter AppsFlyer, the leader in mobile attribution and marketing analytics that allows you to measure the full potential of your marketing efforts, making every ad dollar work smarter. With AppsFlyer, that's your new reality. Dive deep into data-driven insights that reveal exactly where your users come from and how they'll interact with your app. AppsFlyer, where your app's potential meets performance.
Step into the future of game monetization with Xsolla, the premier partner for game developers seeking to expand their reach and revenue. Xsolla provides a robust suite of tools designed to enhance user acquisition, manage subscriptions, and streamline payment solutions worldwide. Unlock new markets and maximize profitability through their customized, secure payment architecture and dedicated support team. Xsolla, powering game developers to achieve global success.
All right, let's transition over to games. Phil, what's going on with Habby?
We've been covering Habby since the really turn of the year. Remember, they had Archero 2, which is starting to scale, and they also have Capybara Go, which is like their big moment, right? That they got these 2 games they're launching. And I think the story with them has been complicated by the fact that every time they've launched a game, it's basically gone downhill after launch. Like that is usually one of its peak revenue periods is very soon after launch. And I think the question for Habby is whether or not they actually want to sustain a title beyond a couple months. And don't be wrong, they've had incredible scale. Like if you look at Survivor.io or Archero, like they've made incredible sums of money. They just seem to peak very early on, which is not the sign of a sustainable business. So a lot of Habby's revenue growth over the years have just been stacking on more and more releases, despite the fact that a lot of them are still declining from when they had their revenue peak. And so I think the thing that I'll be really curious to look at is whether or not Capybara Go and Archero 2 are able to break this pattern and at least grow or sustain over time. And it looks like they're on a semi-good trajectory. I mean, it's really early on, but it looks like they're growing revenue. I think the key is what they're doing on the user acquisition side. And of course, we don't have ad revenue, which we know is a really big part of their playbook. It's a really big part of their meta. It's a really big part of how they've developed a lot of their games. But when we just look at raw IEP, it looks like the games are doing okay, but I still have a lot of concerns about whether or not these games are going to be able to be long-run sustainable businesses. And this is what we look at when we see them stacking. It's basically just been new game introduction that's been accelerating their revenue. Like our Survivor.io was a huge monster success in terms of acquisition, but it's been on the decline. Archero has been on the decline. Capybara Go, we know, is a new game that gave them a spike. Souls, remember their RPG they did?
Dude, I still play that game.
You loved it, right? I remember you talking about this.
I still play. I'm playing it every day, like twice a day. Dude, this thing was like the most streamlined squad-based like collection RPG I've ever played. It's fucking brilliant. But you're right.
But it's on the decline.
I know, it doesn't push you to spend as much as others.
Do you remember SS Snaker? Like that was one that kind of snuck in last year that didn't get a lot of attention. Like that really didn't go anywhere. I think it's a complicated story for this company, and I'm not quite sure. I don't know, Mishko, what do you see when you look into these numbers?
Yeah, I think it was fascinating when you brought this up because I love Habby's games. I haven't played Souls, but I pretty much played everything apart from that. When I started looking at the revenue per download chart, that's where you kind of see like they're, based on this, they're doing really great. Basically, what the revenue per download chart shows is I put in these key titles from Habby. The newest games, they just shut up their revenue per download. Like they keep on, like they've significantly improved how well they monetize. When you think about how Archero 1 kept growing. Now, with the launch of Snake, you can see that it blew through all the records they had. It looks like Capybara Go is going to blow up the records. It looks like Archero 2 is even better in terms of monetization. But at the same time, it looks like it's not enough. Like the games don't have the LTV to scale because on the long term, we see the downloads declining for all these games despite the growing revenue per download. And I think one of the challenges that all these hybrid casual games have is The CPIs are higher, more expensive to scale these days. But the other challenge is that when you have in-app ad revenue, that's capped. So you're really reliant on downloads, because as you show one player more and more ads, as they retain better, you get less money from them because the ads are just not so valuable. So the early ads are more valuable than the late ones. And so that's where your system has to essentially change from ad monetization to in-app purchases. And I think that's where these games are having challenges. And when looking at these graphs from Sensor Tower, like the hybrid casual revenues, it continues to grow. It tends to take a little bit of a portion from casual games nowadays. And I think, like, fast forward a year or two, I'm going to put on my Matthew Ball hat on, and I would say that these publishers are going to turn into what we call casual publishers. I think they're going to start competing against the Dreams, the Playrixes, and the Kings of the world, because having this hybrid model of in-app ads, in-app purchases is just not enough. They need to push even harder in in-app purchases to scale further. That's my hypothesis here.
All right.
Yeah, they learn how to retain, but they don't make money from retention. That's what I mean. Like, the same way as casual publishers.
Cool. Let's move on to what's going on at the end of 2024. I think, Phil, is this yours?
Yes, Circana has released for the United States the top selling box revenue games. Now that includes both retail and digital. And I think there's some surprises on this list, or feel free to tell me if they're not. Of course, like Black Ops 6 is number one. But I think the most interesting part was seeing number two, which is NCAA college football from Electronic Arts. And not only that, do you remember we covered a while back that bundle they did with Madden?
Yeah.
And how many crazy copies they sold? So that MVP Sports bundle that includes NCAA football and Madden came in at number 10 in terms of just unit sales, that single SKU. So if you kind of try to distribute those sales to Madden and to NCAA, I'm sure they would creep up the list even more. Unbelievable success. I think the thing I take away from this, though, is that this is what happens when you have a product that's so big like EA FUT. So that is so much of EA's revenue. And when that catches a cold, the whole company gets a flu. And that's what happened this quarter if you've been following their earnings report. So despite the fact that they had these wins with NCAA football, it's interesting. They blamed it on Dragon Age, which I didn't quite understand. Like, I'm very confused on kind of EA's earnings. Like, this makes it look good. Or at least they've had all the success, but when you have such a big franchise, even 5% down, there's so many wins you need to accumulate to overcome it. I'm not quite sure. What did you take away from this, Eric, when you looked at the top selling games and kind of the EA story?
Look, the EA story is basically FIFA, right? So EA Sports college football outperformed. And I think that would have done, it maybe front loaded football out of the holidays. So that might have hurt them a little bit in that quarter, maybe. Dragon Age, you're right, was a complete miss for them. I mean, like half the units than they expected, they said. But still, that's not material relative to what FIFA drives, right? I think there was almost a $500 million shortfall on FIFA, which is really was certainly not expected on my front. But so I actually talked to an expert in football just like earlier this week to understand, Mr. Jeremy Stein. I don't know if you guys know him, but he's been following the space very, very closely. And it looks what they've done is they've pushed monetization so far that they're pissing people off, right? Including some of their top streamers that have kind of, bowed out and just like rebelled against the game itself. So they need to fix some shit to get the people back. But sometimes it's really, really hard to get out churn spenders. And so this may be a struggle for them. But Jeremy thinks that it is fixable, that these guys are really smart. And what I hope is that hardware adoption will help bring some of these people, re-engage some of the lapsed people and bring them back. But they may need to pull back on the aggressive spending requirements and throw the audience a bone. But overall, this could be a long-term concern for EA, because the rant really is that EA has been relying upon FIFA for growth and earnings and revenue for way too long, right? Without anything else, So it's like, it's only a matter of time before you kind of burn out your spenders, right? Like, you can't just keep shoveling the same shit over and over again, pushing monetization until things break, And this may have been that point for them. So I don't know. I think Jeremy thinks they can recover. I think the jury's out on that. But the really good news for EA, though, is they actually have products coming out next year that are interesting for once, right? Mm-hmm. They have a new Battlefield. They have Iron Man and/or Black Panther. And this could offset any weakness that they see from FC. But in my mind, the reason they are probably accentuating other things besides FC, because if FC is terminally weak or like is not fixable, then they have a real problem on their hands.
Yeah.
Right? Like their earnings power just goes away. And that's a big problem for EA and CEO. So
Yeah. Don't they have Skate coming too?
no one gives a shit
Buckle
about
in, Skate's coming. Yeah, baby.
That is
just saying.
is
Pent
absolute
up demand.
that is absolute fan service. Like, I don't think. Yeah, no.
Do you remember how big Tony Hawk was back in the day, though?
Yeah, but Skate is not like Tony Hawk. It's like more realistic. It had like real ads. I remember real companies advertised inside Skate. That's probably why you liked it. It has an ad placement, so real brands.
Like fundamentally, that misses so many different things. It doesn't check any boxes. It's really not a game that people want. At least I can see, you know. And this is where I could be wrong, but I mean, from all the work I do in terms of looking at what genres matter to people, this is definitely not one of them. You know,
Well,
stating.
I don't know. I haven't looked at it in a long time,
This
but
is, you know,
I just
this is the
remember.
epitome of a Ubisoft project, right? This is like if
was
you
about
had
to
said
say.
Ubisoft was making this game, I'd be like, yeah, of course they are. Fucking the French, dude. The fucking French are at it again. Let's do this, right?
Remember the roller derby game they did
Yes.
recently?
Oh my
Dude,
God.
of course not. Like, no one remembers it because it's so dumb. No one cares.
All right. Let me do my marketing spiel. So last week, I didn't do a thorough job of defending all of marketing on the spot. So after last week's piling on and shitting on all things marketing, I'm going to call this segment Marketing for the Product Skeptics. Don Draper says, F you.
Are you talking about me?
All right. So there are books and books on this. I'm going to try to just pick 3 key things to talk about. And I'm also talking a little bit more specifically about the Severance stunt and how it broke through the zeitgeist, plus the role of innovation and the innovative ideas as part of the media mix. I'll say this at the end, but again, like these ideas are like 20% of your budget or less, most likely less. Most of your budget, 80% of your marketing media mix goes to what Phil loves, especially in mobile, right? In the world of console PC, it could be a little bit different, but you know, 80% goes to shit that works. And then the 20%, it's like a diverse portfolio you get to play with. Okay. So let me give you the 3 key points. I'm going to elaborate and I'm going to try to keep them a little bit focused on money since I know Phil loves money and you guys love money. And I'm not going to bore you too much with the still very important brand metrics and brand impact that ultimately leads to the money, but I know you'll fight me on that. So let me give you 3 of them. So they can't play your game if they haven't heard of it. Number 1, millions of dollars of free media, earned media can happen from these kinds of events. Number 3 is these kinds of events and these things can boost the performance of performance marketing and organics, by the way. You get new creative, you get improved IPMs, and we'll talk a little bit about that later. Okay, so
Go ahead.
let's dive into number 1.
Tell me.
So they can't play the game if they've never heard of it. So in the words of the great Don Draper, success comes from standing out and not fitting in. And so the thing that worked incredibly well about the Severance stunt is that, oh my God, everybody was talking about it. And the reason why is they were building the idea of awareness. So many people didn't know about Severance, even though like I've been a cult fan since day one. They had to increase awareness because people didn't, it's Apple TV Plus, like so many people don't know. So the marketing funnel has different stages depending on like what industry you're in, but always at the top of the funnel is awareness. You have to know about it at the very, very top. I went and pulled Google Trends, you know, because I know my friend Phil would ask me. So clearly people did hear about it. So on the day of the stunt and then the next day, Google Trends showed interest grew from a 23 on the chart to 55 on the chart. Yes, I know that this is against itself. I did put Silo on the chart. I did put also Marvel Rivals just for fun on the chart as well. But we saw a significant change in Google Trends from when the stunt happened to the next day, ultimately to the premiere and the day after the premiere, obviously being the biggest piece. All right. So number 2 is millions of dollars of free media. This is called earned media. So every major paper covered it. All of the talk shows had the cast on. They were talking about it. I just did a very quick search on TikTok and I pulled up one video that had 4.7 million views. Another one had 1.6 million views. And so the amount of just coverage from people, just even on social media, was pretty huge. So it's really tough to estimate the number of impressions that they got. The Ted Lasso billboard promotion from a couple years ago got 2.2 billion impressions. And so I'm just going to throw out, I think they got 500 million impressions. I'm going to be generous and give them a really light CPM of $10. So what that means is to buy 1,000 impressions, you would spend only $10. Now in the video game industry, and I'm being generous here, it's $20 CPMs to $100 plus for many of the influencers to get that kind of impression. So just a little math on that, that's $5 million in earned media. So that is $5 million of your marketing budget that you don't have to spend on buying awareness advertising that they got from doing this stunt. Again, I'm going to be super conservative and say they spent $1 million to pull that off, actors, crew, all of that. So that's $4 million in a sense of the earned media that they had there. Okay. So that's free advertising. Oh, Kress is shitting his pants and is going to get on me in a second.
I love the voodoo math, but go ahead.
Trickle down marketing, economics.
Don Draper is not real, by the way. I want you to be aware, Miss Jen.
So just stop talking.
What? He's not? Oh, I had no idea. I'm trying to make this somewhat interesting because this is boring stuff. All right. So the last one is it can boost the performance of performance marketing. So the main thing that I forgot to mention is this can give you all kinds of new creative. So you get a ton of new creative that you don't have to pay for that can ultimately, in a sense, improve your, click-throughs, your conversion, hopefully your CPI. And so that we saved a lot of money on new creative. And then you reduce the cost. You don't have to do quite as many influencer campaigns because you can have them talk about this event and you can give them this so they don't have to make their creative. And that's a savings. And so when we bring up the funnel, we start to move down the funnel a little bit. Again, like this was not designed to be direct response. This was designed to get people aware of it. Some of the old school is frequency. You need to see something 7 times before you make a purchase. Like that's old school kind of like reach and frequency marketing. You have to do reach, then you get it in front of people. And then when they see it in an ad, they're like, oh yeah, I saw that. I'm going to convert. So it helps with CTR. It helps with conversion. By the way, this is not your entire budget. This is just a little bit. Okay.
I'm going to bed.
I'm ready for questions. Phil.
As we've gone back and forth over the many years, I agree with you. One thing you correctly point out is sometimes you're going after the top of the funnel and you need to respect that. And I get that. And the other thing I really love is you split up this budget 80-20. Like, you don't need to devote 100% of your budget to the brand marketing shit. Like, have a little bit of fun money, get out there, do some weird shit, put some warthogs in like a South Korean mall or something. I don't know. Supercell likes to talk about this and they're like marketing ads or something. Do unscalable things, as like Paul Graham says. I think that's completely reasonable. I would really go back to Eric Seifert, who says that all advertising is performance marketing, because at the end of the day, all I ask for is a model, which is what you've presented here. This is what I ask for from brand marketers. Show me how the top of funnel thing that you're doing ultimately gets to a cost per install and ultimately get to a ROAS number. Like, I get that it's top of funnel, but you need to show me what the refinement process is. Because at the end of the day, you're giving me more pigs, but I want to know how many sausages are going to come out the other end. It's not enough to just show me that you're giving more, because those pigs could be they may not be good meat, ultimately, I want Wagyu shit, who knows? I want high ROAS pigs. And that is what I demand from marketers, because often what I see, Jen, is exactly what you described, right? It's Don Draper. Remember the carousel speech he gives? Where he rebrands this photo projector and he talks about memories from his family.
Takes us to a place.
And he loads it with his own photos.
We ache.
So many times I see brand marketers trying to do stunts to impress each other rather than to maximize growth. And that's the only warning sign I would have. So I'm actually not against any of this. I mean, at the end of the day, this wasn't something that I think invites a lot of scrutiny because the number was so low. That's the other thing I'll remind people of is as budgets rise, that's when you should be applying more scrutiny and demand more direct evidence. But I would also challenge, this is the one thing I'll say, I would also challenge marketers to think about, because y'all are so creative, how could you make this direct response? Remember when we were talking about digital daikus, which from our Gabe Layden, our favorite founder from Machine Zone, remember how he had that QR code that bounced on screen or something along those lines? I would challenge marketers to think about how can you integrate more direct response things even into brand advertising? Absence of evidence is not evidence of absence. I totally accept that. but I would ask about how we could make these things more attributable so we could see your true value.
I get that. And so this was not a direct response piece. This was purely on awareness, and that's fine. So a couple of things you could do to measure this. One is brand lift studies, which, you can see pre-post awareness. You can also do conversion lift, which is pre-post on your ads. Did conversion change at all? That's a kind of a way to know that this was the thing that did it. Organics, what I've had to do in the past is look at pre-post trends. In some cases, like right when the event is happening for a window after. And then also, did your organic versus paid ratio change? We have that on Sensor Tower. Google Trends, as we just looked at, shows some impact. I don't love social listening as much, but it is a way to see where their sentiment changes. Did any of your traffic from App Store website change and increase right after the event? And so a couple of the things on how to make it more direct response where you can. Again, this one wasn't really designed. QR codes, you're absolutely right. I have put QR codes on everything for the last 10 years. Retargeting. And so what you can do is anyone who went and, looked at those things, you can, obviously use all of the different partners that we talk about here. You can do retargeting. You can sign up for this email or sign up for an SMS or a text message. And then that way you've got that relationship you got them in the CRM funnel. The other thing you can do, which you love, is make them an offer and say, hey, 1 month free of Apple TV if you sign up right now, or go to this website or do this thing. And that the event could have led people there. So not exhaustive, but you're right that I would love to find more ways, especially in the world of the QR codes. I see it on my TV all the time now, so everyone's starting to do it. So there you go. That's defensive marketing in a few minutes. Was that okay? Kress,
Bravo.
We're all good. We're all good, Jen.
You guys are bored out of your mind. You're
Defense accepted.
Oh, yes, okay.
Well, you started with Don Draper. I got excited, and then it was like, oh, we're not going there. Okay.
What do you mean you're not going there? I put him in my AI picture.
I have different images of the Don Draper show. It was pretty exciting.
Oh, the Hamaconda? Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah. He lived an exciting life in the 60s. I wanted more references to that time.
All right, everyone. Thank you for hanging in there for my marketing diatribe, and we will see you next week.
See ya.
You did it. You made it to the end of the episode. As a fan of the show, it would help us out if you'd subscribe and leave us a review on the podcast service of your choice. Those stars and likes, while a small action on your part, mean a lot to us and help to grow the show. More importantly, are you a member of the Deconstructor of Fun Slack group? If you have 5 years or more of games industry experience, go to deconstructoroffun.com/Slack and apply to join. Join the games industry best professional community filled with peers always willing to lend a hand, or subscribe to our newsletter to get all the latest insights from the Deconstructor of Fun content creators. Thanks for listening.